All right. Yeah, thank you all for joining us for this sixth Career Steps webinar series organized by the graduate student at NARST. We are so glad to have you here. As is our tradition, please write in the chat where you're joining us from so that we can know where everyone is located. So take some time as you wait for others. Just indicate where you're joining us from in the chat. All right. All right. So I'm going to start, and this meeting is being recorded, so graduate students who are not able to make it today should be able to view the recording later. So, um, as Isaac Newton stated, that if we have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. And there are people who've gone ahead of us. They've gone through the graduate studies. They've made progress in their career trajectory. So we hope that they will provide inspiration to graduate students. They will give us advice regarding the challenges that come along the way, and just help folks who are starting out on this journey. So today we're delighted to have Dr. Jomo Mutegi. He's a past NARST president. So if you're new to NARST, he will share with us the many resources that are available for us. But before, I want to just talk a little bit about this Career Step webinar series for anyone who might be joining us for the first time. So we understand that navigating the transition from graduate student to a fulfilling career can be overwhelming, especially if you're just beginning with your graduate studies, because there are countless possibilities. There's industry, there's academia, there's working for government or nonprofits, and beyond. So students sometimes find themselves uncertain about what career path to pursue, or even where to begin. We understand that as a graduate student committee, we recognize this challenge, and we're proud to provide a space in this Career Steps webinar series. This is an engaging monthly webinar series that is designed to illuminate multiple career trajectories. We want to provide practical guidance. Also, it's a space for meaningful connections within the NARST community. So this series features accomplished PhDs and seasoned NARST members like Dr. Mutegi that we're fortunate to have here today. And these folks have traversed the journey that some of you are beginning. We hope that by sharing their stories, complete with the challenges they faced, the pivotal moments that they encountered, and even unexpected opportunities. We hope that our speakers will bring to life the myriad routes to career success. More than just being an inspiration, we hope that these sessions will provide concrete strategies, resources, and networks you can leverage as you craft your own career path. After all, sometimes, it just one meaningful connection, one idea can spark that point that redefines your career trajectory. And so the structure of this session is as follows. So we'll have 20 to 30 minutes where our guest shares their career journey. And then as they do that, they'll talk about insights, key decisions, or turning points. They'll also provide practical guidance for graduate students, And then later, after they've taken some time to talk about their journey, we'll open it up for questions and answers from our participants. You can unmute your mic then and just ask the question yourself, or you can as well write the question in the chat and I will read it out for you. And so, without any further ado, I would like to take this time to open the floor for our guest, Dr. Mutegi. Um, Take it away.
Okay, thank you, Cons. I appreciate that. As I start, I don't want to upset the format that you have, and I'm prepared to do that. But I do want to stress if you all have questions and you want to jump in asking questions at any point, feel free to do that. If you don't, I'll go through and do some sharing. What I find is that sometimes I may talk 10, 15, 20 minutes before I hit something that really touches a nerve that you want to have addressed. And since we're here in this format, I think we can bypass that spent time and get right to the questions if you have them. So feel free to interrupt as needed.
Perfect.
Um, this seminar I think is a great idea, and I think it's very timely. What's really ironic is that Mary Atwater and Brittany Garvin just edited a book, and the book was called A Place Called Home in Science Education, and they had researchers, science education researchers at various stages of the career path present autobiographical accounts of their own work in academia. And so much of what I'm going to share with you here is grounded in the chapter that I wrote for that book. I put the link to my chapter in the chat. Can you all see that? Okay, so you can feel free to download it. I'm going to read one or two excerpts, and then I'll just use the rest as maybe talking points. But again, if you have questions about specific things, just jump in, and I'm happy to answer. I'm going to start with giving you a sense of. I like to start with my commitment to science education, and I sometimes say that I'm really agnostic about the specific discipline or the specific topics that I study. What's really important to me is not the research focus that I've committed to. What's important to me is that I'm doing something that helps to advance the condition of Black people. And I feel like I can do that as a science educator. I could do it as an English educator. If I were a physical therapist, I could do that. If I were a physician, I can do that. If I built furniture, if I threw trash, no matter what I do in life, I can work to help improve the condition of Black people. So it just happens that I ended up as a science educator very much by accident. And my work over the past 30 years or so has been to figure out how can I use what is afforded to me in the position I'm in to help improve our social condition. I'm going to share a story. Then this comes from the chapter. We sat there waiting for the pep rally to begin, poking fun at one another and giggling at our own silliness, as 13-year-old boys are wont to do. While I don't recall the specifics of the teasing or the silliness, I do recall my school chum's assertion that a certain person was not smart because he was Black. What do you mean by that? I asked sharply. My response was not one of curiosity, it was defiance. I wanted this underachieving boy to justify his claim that Black people were not smart. Oh, come on, you know what I mean. You know Black people aren't as smart as white people. If I was defiant, he was exasperated. He could not believe that I would even question such an obvious truth. Then began the coup de grace. I'm smarter than you. We had been in school together since fifth grade, so the academic pecking order was well established. He retorted, That's different. You're just one person. I interrupted. Danny is smarter than you. Danny was the second of three Black students in our eighth grade class. He grew frustrated. Would you stop? I wouldn't stop. I interrupted again. Paige is smarter than you. Paige is the third of three Black students in our class. I paused briefly to let that reality set in. He said nothing. He just glared at me, trying to suppress a smile. And I continued. As a matter of fact, every black person you know is smarter than you. This is a true story. And the person I was talking with was one of my better friends. But I use it as an example of the environment in which my K-12 schooling took place. So I attended a private conservative Christian school, relatively few black students, more than many of the other schools that we would compete against and collaborate with, but still few in the grand scheme of things. And while racism was never put on the table as a subject of the day for the students and the teachers, certainly for the black students in the class, in the school, it was foregrounded as an ever present issue that we had to contend with. And it was coded. It was coded in the jokes that were told, some of the decisions that were made, um, the way the curriculum was structured, the way teachers and administrators interacted with each other and with students. Racism was a pervasive reality of that schooling experience. And for me, uh, I left the school with a commitment to have something along the lines of what I got from that school, which was I got a very good education. I never had any difficulty navigating any educational space I had been in. As an undergraduate, I met people who were the top of their classes in the public schools that I would have attended, but they couldn't maintain their major. They would have to change majors. Some flunked out of school. I never had those problems. We learned how to read, write, and do math, and we did that well. So I appreciate that. At the same time, it was a psychologically debilitating space if you weren't of the right constitution. And so this is what really I turned to this experience as the foundation for my commitment to improving the life condition of black people. Um, in the book in the chapter I call it my education the four R's. The fourth R being racism, and I point to this as my driving passion to give a sense of why I've made the career decisions I made. It's not the only reason, or it's not the only cause, but it's never not one of the top three or four causes for the decisions I make. All right, I'm going to transition to the that's foundational. I want to touch on, I think, let me see, Colin, so I can see insights and key decisions. I want to touch on those some of these insights and key decisions. I'm actually calling this my professional journey, and there's four key decisions I'll point to, which mark points of divergence in my professional journey. Okay, so as an undergraduate, I studied chemistry. I have a dual degree in chemistry and biology. I didn't want to. I didn't want to become a scientist. I wanted to own a business and start a school. Again, going back to this formative experience I just described. Um, my senior year of high school, I took some business courses. I took an accounting course. I took an economics course. I couldn't stay awake. And so by the time I got to college, I asked my admissions officer, I said, I don't think I'm going to be able to do business. She said, why? I said, it's not, there's nothing interesting in it to me. And she said, well, you can major in whatever you want. Your SAT was good enough. Your GPA is decent. You know, I said, well, I've always liked science. And my thinking was, at least I'll get a degree and I'll figure out the rest later on. Don't laugh at me too much when I tell you some of the ignorant decisions I made. I was the first in my family to go to college in a traditional way. So we didn't have a familiar history of navigating post-secondary spaces. All right, so at the end of that 4 years of undergraduate, I'm now looking at graduate school. And back then, we didn't have the internet the way it is now. We had these big phone book size manuals called Peterson's Guide. And you go to the Peterson's Guide and it will have a summary of all the colleges throughout the country, really. And I'm looking through Peterson's Guide and I'm looking for a warm environment. So I looked at Florida. I looked at schools in California. I looked at schools in Hawaii. I was getting out of the Northeast. Grew up in Northeast Ohio, went to school in Erie, Pennsylvania, and I was tired of being cold. And consistently, the program I saw was science education. And I thought maybe that makes sense. If I want to start a school, I need to know about education. I've already done these 4 years of science. I know about science, so maybe that makes sense. Again, more of the ignorance that I'm describing to you, right? And I really got lucky. I ended up applying to 4 schools, and I got accepted to Florida State. So Ohio was off the list. I'm going down to the sunshine. I didn't know anything about. Is my connection good? Can you hear me?
It's flickering a little bit, but we can hear you now.
Okay.
So I'll let you know in case you drop out.
Let me know if it does, and I'll see if I need to switch it.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. It was flickering, but we can hear you.
Okay. Okay. So I ended up going down to Florida State. I didn't know anything about the school. I didn't know anything about the program. I didn't know anything about the faculty or about the discipline. I was learning as I went, and I went on a one-way ticket, straight out of. I think I was 22 years old going down there. I was very, very fortunate. I was lucky. The program I went to was a very strong program. Angela Collins eventually became my major professor. She had a grant. She invited me to work on the grant, and she advocated for me. Ken Tobin was a faculty member there at the time. I think my first year there, he was president-elect of NARST. So he was well established. He had several grants, which brought people to campus. And of course, both of them were very highly regarded in the field. Alejandro Guillard, who many of you probably know, was a junior faculty member at the time there. And so he became an excellent resource for me in helping me to learn about this new field. And so I absolutely loved what I was doing. I mean, I was like a kid in a candy store. I come into class and they say, find a book you're interested in and just read it and we're going to discuss it. I say, I can read anything I want and that's going to count and we're going to talk about it. I was in heaven. And so I really loved the independence and autonomy that came with doctoral level work. I really loved the theorizing and philosophizing. I did that not knowing what I was doing anyway. And so it just worked out to be a great institution and a great fit. And I was in nice weather. I met a lot of great friends. Everything just worked out well. I was lucky, very, very lucky. My I think being as unknowledgeable as I was instrumental in shaping how I approached academia. So I didn't really question. I mean, of course, we always question the content of what we're studying. That's part of our skepticism. But I didn't question what was the right way to do things. And by right way, I'm speaking in terms of the ideal, the model case. I gravitated immediately to the model case in all instances. And so when I understood, okay, new research has to grow out of existing research, I said, okay, what's existing research? This is the existing research, whether I like it or don't like it, whether it's of interest or not of interest. That's where I'm beginning, and that's how I started my research agenda. At that time, the only writing, primary writing you found on Blacks in science was around this phenomena of career decisions and disparities with testing. Um, it was usually couched as just performance in general, and sometimes career decision was also couched under that. But my early work was looking at African American students' career decisions because that was what the existing literature gave us. Was I interested in it? I mean, I wasn't not interested in it, but no, no, I didn't lay up. It was just what was given to me, and it fit what an ideal research agenda should look like, in that it drew from existing work. And so, in the early part of my research, my dissertation, and my first few studies, you'll see a strong tie to previous work, even though a part of me saw the existing work as very problematic. It made some problematic assumptions. The framing was problematic, but I was going with it. Transition, I call that phase understanding and working within the norm. I'm using Kuhn's cycle of scientific revolutions for these headings, okay? So understanding and working within the norm is one phase of normal science that Kuhn gives us. The second phase is drifting from the norm. And in my own life, I saw this drift. In the chapter, let me see, I think I will tell this story in the chapter. Let me see if I've marked it. I did not. Oh, I did actually. You don't mind me reading again? Do you mind me reading?
No. It's okay. You can read.
Okay. So this is just the introduction to this drifting from the norm section. I'll read it and then I'll elaborate. It is sometimes said that a brave arm makes a short sword long. In my experience, desperation has sometimes been a substitute for bravery. I was somewhat desperate when I completed my doctoral work. The search for my first faculty position was a difficult one. I was geographically bound and fairly limited in job opportunities. There was an announcement for a senior level faculty position at a nearby university. Knowing that I did not qualify, yet having few other options, I applied for the position. To my surprise, the department chair called me into her office for a meeting. When I arrived, she had my paltry 4-page CV on the table next to the position announcement. After introduction, she smiled and said, "Do you know that you do not qualify for this position?" I smiled back stupidly. "Yes, I know." She continued smiling. "We have another position for which you do qualify if you would be interested." She went on to describe a postdoctoral fellowship offered by the university. She was very generous. She worked with me to submit my application, provided me with access to the university library and email so that I could work while my application was being reviewed. I eventually received that postdoctoral fellowship, and it became my first university appointment. At this time, this time in history, postdoctoral fellowships were not very common, especially in science education, who had one. They became more common over the next 5 to 10 years. Despite the rarity of the postdoc, it was a tremendous benefit for me because there was so much I had yet to learn. The fellowship gave me 2 years before being on the tenure clock to master the publication cycle. Write, submit, reject. Write, submit, reject. Okay. And so I give that as some context for two reasons. Number one, what I learned is that it doesn't hurt to try, even if you expect the outcome to not work in your favor. And desperation pushed me to try. I didn't have any other options. So I pursued an option that was not really an option, but it actually worked in my favor. I stumbled into something beneficial for me, which was that position. The other thing is what I call here the no publication cycle. And so in the chapter, I explain more about why it took me so long, but it wasn't that I was struggling with what research is or understanding the literature or having a strong data set. It was the intangible things that we don't teach. So when should you collaborate with someone? When should you reach out to an editor before you make a submission? How do you tailor your specific submission to the style of the journal to which you're submitting? And so these are some of the things that I've had to learn by trial and error. And it's much better now, but here at this time period, a review cycle was anywhere from 9 months to a year and a half. And you can only submit one paper at a time. So I had 3 or 4 manuscripts that I was constantly writing, rewriting, and submitting. It just took 5 years for the first one to get hit. Okay. With that, though, uh, I think was an internal frustration. So every day for 5 years, I'm doing a job and I'm not seeing the fruit of my labor. Whereas other areas of my life, and in the story, I use the example of cutting the grass. I go out, I cut the grass. Oh man, look at that grass. Well, that lawn look beautiful. Yeah, I spent all day Saturday on it. And it's like I had a sense of satisfaction that I didn't get on my job. And I remember talking to my mother about this. Like, why do I feel so unfulfilled? It's because you don't always see the results of the work. The um, the curve from input to output is so much longer than what we get from cutting the grass or hanging drywall or some of the other daily tasks that can pull us away from our work. That drift, again using Kuhn's metaphor, that drift that I felt personally began to pull me away from academia to a degree. Not totally, obviously, I'm still here, but it did split my attention. It also pulled me away a bit from my focus on underrepresentation as an explanation, or excuse me, students' career decisions as an explanation for underrepresentation. Remember, I was sticking with it because I wanted to grow out of existing work. But I just had to talk with myself, why am I wasting time on something I know is not the case? I know that these students are facing racism. I know they're not becoming scientists or they're getting into the field and dropping out because of interactions they're having with their colleagues. And so these various types of drift, personally and professionally, caused me to shift my work away from looking at students' decisions as a factor for underrepresentation and more towards the social structure in the making of scientists as a cause for underrepresentation. And I just started reframing my work away from career decisions and more towards career attainment. What's necessary for you to attain this career? What elements are there? What elements are not there? And I had a few smaller studies which challenged some of these basic assumptions, these correlations which were being read as causalities and things of that nature. So I look at that as the second move. These moves are gradual. Um, Again, none of this is by design. It's how it worked out. But when I look back on it, I realize that there is a great degree of graduality, gradations to these shifts. I'm going to pause there and see if what I'm saying is making sense and to see if there's questions or comments. Juliet, you're nodding. I guess that means it's making sense. Okay.
Welcome, Patrick. I see Patrick has joined us.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Patrick, how are you?
I'm fine, and how are you doing too?
We're doing well. We're doing well. We're glad to have you.
Good.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to go to the third shift, which is responding to a sense of crisis. I ended up leaving. I didn't say this, but I was at the University of Pittsburgh, that job I applied for that I knew I shouldn't have been hired for. And I ended up going to Morgan State University. And this next phase corresponds mostly to the time I was at Morgan State University. And there are three things really that drove me here. I won't read on this one. But one of the things that drove me was a relationship with two students that I had. Both were math educators, and we ended up setting up an office off campus. One of my students didn't have office space on campus. I had office space, but it wasn't as useful as I wanted it to be. And so I had purchased a small townhouse in Baltimore, and one of my other students, his dad, did some contract work, and he said that we can go in there and we can convert it to an office. And we did that. And it was really nice. We called it the command center. It was the three of us, and it gave them nice office space. We actually did things in the community around the office. We did community cleanups periodically. But it formed a nice think tank because we were all pretty much like-minded and we were all asking those same questions. How can we use our role as math educators and science educators to advance our condition? I couldn't put his name in the chapter, but I'll share it here. The other student was Julius Davis, and Julius is actually now at Bowie State University. He's an endowed faculty member. I think the position he holds is the Elkins Professorship. Excuse me, which is given to one faculty member throughout the entire University of Maryland system. So he is doing very well, and his work even now is still following up on that same type of work he was envisioning as a doctoral student. The other student is Latasha Thompson, and she opted not to stay in academia. If she had, she would have been the president of ARA about 4 or 5 years ago. She was really, really good. And it breaks my heart that she didn't stay, but she went to back to government, and she made quite a bit more money there. And she still has publications. She still publishes. So she would have been an excellent educational researcher. But the think tank with them was one of the drivers of this shift. There was also a community group in DC that I became affiliated with that helped to drive this shift. And really, this third shift is more in line with where my work has been moving, I'd say the past 10, 15 years or so. And I think there was for me personally, a heightened degree of frustration with my research, even after making a shift to looking at career attainment, in that we were not really, I was studying why these outcomes are the way they are. I didn't have faith and confidence that that was translating into anything tangible for learners. And so the shift here became, what does education need to look like for Black children, and how can I affect that change? It's not even a research question, right? It's more of a personal reflection question. I'm really, how can I maneuver within this research space and give our people something that we can use to change education for us? I have a JARS paper from 2011. It grew directly out of this time period. I remember writing it in that office with Tasha and Julius, and I presented it at NARST. No, it was ARA was where I first presented it. That year, I think it was 2006, and eventually developed it into the version that was published. And I look at that as a foundational piece for my later work, which is a reframing of STEM curriculum. Okay. All right, so that's what I'm characterizing as response to the crisis. Fast forward from there, maybe 6, 7 years, and I have this model that has been worked through with Julius, and I think I did one paper with Tasha. I have other students I've worked with, and another colleague. We've taken this model and we've shown, look, this is what this model could look like in math education spaces. Here's what it could look like in elementary education spaces. And so we've tried to show various ways that it could be done. In my own courses and in professional developments, I've given exercises. Here's how we would take a standard curriculum and modify it to reflect this 5-part approach. At some point, though, I felt like I was whistling in the wind, and I knew that it was not something that was going to be taken up by the teachers with whom I was trying to present it. I haven't written much about this, but it's what I characterize as resistance. And no issue with that. People are free to embrace or resist whatever they want to. But in terms of a practical solution, I realize that it's not much of a solution if the people who should put it in front of children don't put it in front of children. And so that is what brought me to the fourth shift or transition, which is the period I'm in now. And I call this a personal and quiet revolution. And the revolutionary shift for me has been simply taking the model. I haven't named it. It's socially transformative STEM curriculum. So taking that model and putting it into products that will get in front of children. the products that I've opted to put it in are products that parents use. So it's in children's books, it's in curriculum products that homeschoolers will use, it's in curriculum that are written for informal science education spaces. The informal landscape has been a primary vehicle for getting this model in front of end users. And that has brought with it some of its own challenges. So I haven't talked much about it so far, but each of these stages, I have talked about the challenges of the stages. I haven't talked about what we can do in the face of those challenges. And I'm gonna get to that in a moment. But what I do want to say is that on this most recent iteration, one of the biggest challenges is the reward structure through which we work as academics. And so it might make me feel good to say, hey, I wrote a children's book, and this book approaches science with 5 areas of mastery that children need to become useful users of science as they become adults. And then my colleagues look at it and say, yeah, but we don't count children's books. We need to see a referee journal publication. And so for me, the added challenge has been, okay, so how can I do work that is meaningful for the larger Black community, but also meaningful for me, so I keep my job, keep my money coming. And I'm sure that's something that we all want. We want to keep our job, keep our money coming. Okay. Collins nodded yes, so I believe that's something we operating on. All right. I'm gonna pause before I get into the last part, which is advice. I think, Collins, in your outline, you said practical advice for graduate students.
Yes.
In my chapter, I called it advice to my younger self.
Perfect.
But before I get into that, I want to pause and see if there's comments or questions, and if what I shared about the trajectory makes sense to everyone.
Yeah, I have a question, just reflecting on what you've been talking about. Especially, I'm asking this for those folks who might not be here with us today. Just thinking about the analogy that you shared about cutting grass and seeing the results immediately. And then in academia, sometimes you might work for years through your grad students, doctoral work, but still, you're going somewhere, you're moving the needle as some other people put it, but you're not seeing results. So some folks just get frustrated and they give up and they stop and they think that this is not for me. So how have you motivated yourself when you're not seeing results come as fast as you hope?
So I'm going to say, when you ask how have I motivated myself, let me be transparent. The short answer is I have not motivated myself. It's been a frustration. That's why you see these shifts the way you do. And one of the points of advice to my younger self is aimed at, if I could talk to myself 20 years ago, what would I tell myself so that through that 20-year period, I could stay more consistent and motivated? That makes sense to you? In fact, just this past, what is this, December? It must have been maybe November, maybe it was late October. I was reflecting on how to look at my work differently so I didn't get discouraged at the sense that there was no progress or that it wasn't meaningful to people. So what you're describing is not a problem that I've encountered and found solution to. It's a problem that I've encountered and I'm still wrestling with it. That makes sense? Okay. Now I'm going to share with you where I am in my wrestling, and that may help. So maybe you can be further along in your wrestling journey than me, but I don't want you to look as though I have a clear solution on it, because I don't. Um, Let me share. I'm going to share another story with you. This story is important for giving context to the advice to my younger self. Before I get to the story, though, one reason I call it advice to my younger self is because I really believe that most doctoral students that I encounter, I know for the ones I encounter, you all are much further ahead than I was when I was a doc student. I told you I went to school, I didn't even know what the mascot for the school was. So I don't want to take it upon myself to say, here's something you need to do, because I think that many times students now have much more savviness than I had myself. But I do still think that we can all learn from somebody else's example. And so I've just identified, okay, after 20 years, what is the kernel of truth or the kernel of goodness that would have sustained me more? I think we can all get some insight from that. I'm going to share this story. This happened a few years ago when I was in Indiana. One year, I had an undergraduate student stop by my office at the start of spring semester. He had just returned from a semester-long study abroad experience in China and was excited to tell me about it. After regaling me with stories of the past 4 months, he thanked me. For what? I asked. For making me go on a trip, he replied. I was confused. I couldn't make you go on that trip. Then he reminded me, last year, I mentioned the trip to you, but I decided not to go because it would delay my graduation by a semester. You explained to me that the opportunity to go to China for 4 months for free was an opportunity that I might never have again, that I might not ever have again. Then you told me that you would be disappointed in me if I didn't go. That's why I went. Until that moment, I had forgotten the specific conversation. This is a student that I had known since he was a sophomore. Over those 2 years, he worked with me as a student worker. He was part of a study group that I coordinated. And he sometimes joined me as I attended community leadership, where my being disappointed actually meant something to him. This experience helped me to realize that in the course of doing my daily work as a faculty member, I had many opportunities to positively impact the lives of Black people. While I sought that impact through scholarship, I realized that most in the relationships I was able to build. The takeaway lesson for me was to focus more on what I can do and spend less time concerned about what I cannot do. As I look over my career as a university faculty member, I've been able to provide employment to undergraduate and graduate students, a sense of community through student organizations, study groups, and research groups, safe spaces and protection from university bureaucracy, affirmation to students, friends, and colleagues, and legitimacy to my community partners. So this is so the first bit of advice to my younger self is to focus on what you can do, not what you cannot do. And it's one way that I address the frustration. And it's for me to paper and education. You all there? Okay.
We're there, but you cut out. So like
Okay.
like 2 sentences
So
before we didn't hear what you said.
yeah, so I'll go back. What I was saying is that this experience helped me to focus more on what I can do, not on what I can't do. I can definitely impact the students who are in front of me every day. I can impact them through the relationships I build, through the advice I give them, through the security I can provide to them. You know, we're not rich as faculty members, but if we get grants, we can employ students. We can provide support for them to go to conferences. Um, I've had situations where I've hired high school students who can work with me on campus. I had a situation where a student had employed did some things he shouldn't have done, and he had to lose his job for life. I stopped that. I can't keep you from losing your job. This one gone. But I'll do everything I can to make sure that maybe, 10, 15, 20 years down the line, if you want to come back, you can be employed by the university. So using our role as university members of the university community to advocate for people, those are things that are within my space to do. Now, if I write a paper and the district doesn't look at my paper and then transform how they do education, that's okay. You know, the paper doesn't serve that function. Maybe the function of the paper is to put me in a position to be able to get grants and keep a good reputation in my department, in my college, so I can help the students who are in my charge. Okay. All right, so that's one bit of advice. Also, this is not on my list, but I'm just speaking to your question earlier. Another way of looking at this, Collins, that I have for myself is to move with the assumption that what we do has an impact, even when we don't see the impact. We've all had teachers who are great teachers. I have a teacher, my high school science teacher, is really one of the reasons I said I can do science for 4 years. How many students does that teacher have that have come back to him and say, "Hey, I appreciate what you did for me as a teacher"? Very few. Many of us have taught. How often do our students come back to us and say, "I appreciate what you did in the class that I took with you"? It happens very, very rarely. And it's not that the students are ill-intentioned. It's just how things are structured. Your job is to teach. My job is to learn. You teach, I'll go on about my business. Or when I'm talking to my buddies, yeah, this guy, he was a great teacher, but I don't always go back and tell him. And so we have to be able to rest assured that we're having an impact, even when we don't see it, or when that impact is not affirmed in any obvious way. All right, so the second point of advice for myself is to chart your own path, even if it is unconventional, and especially if it meets a need. Even if it is unconventional, and especially if it meets a need. And so when I described earlier the children's books or the curriculum, I have an email list of parents and uh, some of my colleagues, which is fine. I send out every once a week. I send an email to them, and I usually try to touch on some point of Black history and also a point on what can we do, given this new knowledge, what can we do with our children? And so, just as an example, there was one I did on enclosed cognition and how the clothes we wear actually plays a role in shaping how we see and interact and think in the world. So, in just 500 words, I gave a summary of what this body research looks like, what it means, and what does that mean for our children. And one exercise I gave, I said, look, take your son or daughter and do an experiment. Dress them up really nice for half a day and go out shopping and make them take note of how people interact with them. Come home for lunch, put on some very casual, dress down clothes and go out and see how people interact with them. And just have them compare. I did that with my son also. And so each week I give some pointer along these lines. And whether people respond to me and say, "Hey, I did that project you said" or not, I can't control that. I'm not gonna go behind tapping everybody on the shoulder. Did you read it? Did you do it? But of a few thousand people, I know somebody did it. And so for me, I feel good that some of the work and the insight that I have as an academic is finding a way to end users, to children and their families. It's unconventional. It may not count. I still put on my dossier anyway. A reviewer may not count it, but it's still going to be there because it needs to be done. All right, the third bit of advice is to embrace tradition. And I'm kind of a traditionalist in some ways, and then I like traditional things. I mean, I hate going to graduation, but when I'm at graduation and we come through with the mace, I love seeing the mace come through and just knowing what it means and what it represents. And then the regalia, I like the tradition of it. One of the traditions that we have in academia that I think we need to embrace is this is the only one, but this is just one publication. I would argue that to some degree, publications is a waste of time. I would not argue that we shouldn't do it. And when I say a waste of time, I mean why would I spend 2 years writing something that two people gonna read? Juliet, you gonna read? If you wanted two people gonna read my article, I could take you out to lunch and tell you about what that paper was about, right? So in that sense, I say that's a waste of time. On the other hand, it is the currency with which we do things in academia. And so advice to my younger self is, look, man, embrace this. Get as much of that currency as you can get within reason. We're not going to sacrifice other things to get it, but get as much as you can within reason, because that's going to open up doors for you in this world where people still do honor this currency, whether it has any meaningful impact or not. And I use publications as an example. It's not the only one, but I would say embrace traditions because they will position you to be in a position where you can be a better service to those around you. Patrick, you're nodding your head. Does that make sense without me elaborating? Okay. All right. And then my last point of advice to myself from this chapter: be patient. Academia is a marathon, not a sprint. And so my 20-year-old self was mad because I didn't see changes in a few days. My 50-year-old self says, it's okay. Enjoy those few days. It may take years. Enjoy those years. And when you look up, the seed you planted 5 years ago is going to come to fruition. It's going to show some fruit 5 years later. Experience will help you to realize it, that we just want to be consistent and be patient and just have an understanding that things will come. Another practical way of thinking about this, some years ago, every year, a lot of us do this. You sit down, you map out your goals for the year. I used to say, okay, my goal for, let me go back in time. My goal for 2010 is to get 3 publications. Well, at some point I said, you know what? My goal should not be to get 3 publications. That's not in my control. You know what's in my control? To submit papers. I can fully control that. I can't control if the reviewer or the editor is going to accept it or not. So I shifted my attention. I said, okay, my goal for 2015 is to submit 4 papers for publication. And then this 4th point of advice comes in. Be patient. Academia is a marathon, not a sprint. Once I do my last sign off on it, hit send, I don't even think about it anymore. It's done. I'm on to something else. And me not thinking about it anymore helps me to be patient because I'm doing something else. Okay. All right. I'm not sharing my slides. I'm just looking at them here. But the next slide I'm on right now has a thinker, and it says comments and questions. So I'm going to open up the floor.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for just sharing your journey. This has been phenomenal. Yeah, so I'm going to let the others ask questions first because I already asked one question, and then maybe I can ask another question later. So, Shalom, Juliet, or Patrick, if you have questions, you can ask our guest. Now, there's a question in the chat, so okay, I'll read that. What was the topic of your dissertation, and what advice would you give to someone starting the proposal writing process? Did you hear me?
Okay, so the first part, the topic of my dissertation.
Yeah.
I heard you.
Okay, good.
So in response to the first part, the topic of my dissertation, I'm not sure if I'll get the title exactly right, but it was examining the worldview assumptions of 4 students making a science career decisions. That sounds so terrible. That wasn't it. But basically, it was a case. It was 4 case studies.
Okay.
These were all students, college students who began college as science majors. 2 of them switched majors before graduating, and 2 of them persisted in their majors. At least I say before the time I met them, and the other 2 were persisting towards their major at the time I met them. I use worldview theory as my guiding framework. So it was really a worldview analysis. I didn't elaborate on it too much, but remember I told you I was sold by the book throughout my dissertation work because it was all new to me, and I thought you should be stricken by the book. In terms of how I would advise someone starting the proposal writing process, I almost don't want to answer that, because if you came to me at the proposal writing process and didn't already have an idea of your dissertation, I feel like you missed a lot. I would like to talk to someone who is at the start of their doctoral program. And what I would say at the start of your doctoral program is I would say, try to identify an area of research that you're interested in. Not a specific research question, but just a topic area. And so if you say, you know what, I was a chemistry teacher for a number of years, and students always struggle with the concepts of acid bases. And I just never could figure out why. So I'm kind of interested in students' understanding of acid-base reactions. That's pretty specific. But we might say, okay, well, look, let's broaden it out a little bit and just say you're interested in misconceptions. And so once you have a reasonable area, not too narrow, not too big, I would say over the next 2 to 3 years before you get to the proposal stage, in every class, professor's gonna give you some kind of project. It may be a lit review. Fine, do lit review on that research interest. They may give you a grant writing project. That's beautiful. Do grant writing project on that area of interest. If you have to do a methods course and collect a small sample data, that's the best. Collect your data on that area of research. And what happens through this process is that you will begin to narrow. First you're learning more about your topic area, and that knowledge, that learning is helping you to then narrow your research question. So by the time you get to your proposal writing stage, you have a very good sense of what questions around this topic have been asked, what questions have been answered, what things are still unknown. And I won't say it makes it easy. This is always going to be work, but you're not grasping for straws. You're trying to assemble what you've gathered over 2-3 years. If you came, I'm not saying you, Juliet, but if a person came to me and hasn't done any of that at the proposal writing stage, it's just you got a lot of work to do, because you still need to get a sense of what is the prevailing state of the field, and that's a lot of reading to do in a semester that you're writing your proposal.
All right, I just want to remind everyone that we're at the top of the hour, and I want to honor your time and thank you all for first joining us today. Thank you, Dr. Mutegi, for the insights that you've shared today. We really appreciate that you've made time for us and other graduate students. Other graduate students are going to watch this video and just get those nuggets that you've shared, and appreciate all of you for asking questions. Hope that you'll have the rest of your day, and happy 2026.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you all.
Thank you.
really appreciate it. All right. Thank you so much, Jama, for making time for us today.
Thank you, Collins.
Yeah, really
I
appreciate it.
appreciate the invite.
Yeah, have enjoy your holidays. Hopefully, I'll see you at NARST in Seattle.
You definitely will see me at NARST. Yes, I'll
Awesome.
be there.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah.
All right.
Happy 2026.
Yes, yes. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.